Yo, what up, guys? We're on the clock. Welcome back. We wanted to get this video up yesterday, but Saturday morning will do. No problem with that. A little Saturday listening. I hope you guys are having a great day, having a great start to weekend. Today we're kind of following up on our last big board video that we did, kind of breaking down our top 15 guys that we're watching for this season, and we thought we'd give you guys a little hint to some of our deep cuts that we kind of got. What do you guys say to the people, Julian?
Well, it's the usual suspects back in action. Um, Look, if you didn't see your guy on our top 15 big board,
You may see him
odds are
here.
they're probably here. Um, and if they're not here, let us know. 'Cause
Yeah,
that
drop a
means that,
comment below. Let us know. Add us on Twitter. You know where to find us.
yeah, because I mean, if they're not on here, that means either we missed something or you might be wrong.
Or maybe we're wrong. You never know.
Either way.
It's very early in the process, and a lot of this is kind of grasping at straws and grasping at things that we're seeing, um, that we want to continue to see throughout this season. Flashes from high school, flashes from previous college season. This is where a lot more of our returners are going to be. You look in that in the mix column, and it's a lot of second year guys, third year guys, and even some former national player of the years. Um, I'd say right off the bat, some names that are probably missing that you're like, oh my gosh, guys, how are you guys not scouting these guys? Where are they? Drew Timmy is one that probably is people are like, oh my gosh, if you're talking about college basketball, how are you not talking about Drew Timmy? I'm sorry. We're not big believers that, certain guys don't fit the NBA game. And I think as a draft scout, especially this early on, we're kind of looking more for upside swings. And I think that perfectly encapsulates kind of our working theory on why some of these guys are on there. Kind of breaking down each of the columns. We have honorable mentions who are guys that I may have in my top 15 that Julian didn't have, or vice versa. In the mix are guys that we're generally, we agree with most of the consensus around them. We think that they're in the mix to be a first round pick. Maybe not as many guys in this column that have lottery upside as the guys in the honorable mentions column, but still a really good group of players. And then our stop sleeping on column, I think these are guys that we strictly look at as late first round options, good, pieces that if you're looking to, add bench depth, you're looking to add a high quality young player or a high quality veteran player that can come in and fill specific roles. I think our stop sleeping on guys are more role players and fit certain specific stuff, or they're guys that are have crazy upside that we wanna put you guys on. You have any more comments before we kind of get into it? We're gonna be pretty loose with this one, guys. We don't really have a immediate structure that we're gonna follow.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of the guys in the mix and the stop sleeping on guys are either some of these guys that we think you should stop sleeping on are probably shots for next year as well. Like guys like Adou Thiero, Ty Rogers, maybe they may declare this year and they may play well enough to be late first round
Don't even
picks.
get me on start on Ty Rogers. I think he's a first round guy this year.
I mean, I think
We
Illinois is a
want to
very
start with Ty
talented team.
Rogers.
We'll start with Ty Rogers. I like Ty Rogers, by the way. I'm a big Ty Rogers fan. My only thing to say with Ty Rogers is they've got a few very high level transfers coming in. They've got Terrence Shannon and Mike Meyer, right? So I think Ty Rogers can be the starting point guard for that team, but he's going to have to fight for it. And I think if he's not the starting point guard on that team, then it may be more beneficial to him to be the guy next year and be a surefire first round pick. That's my only reason for Ty Rogers staying back. Adou Thiero is we'll get to him if you want to. I'll give you your shot at Ty Rogers, but I think Adou Thiero is a guy in a similar situation where we both love the talent, but I think just the way that the depth chart shakes out with these two guys, it may be one of those situations where yeah they show flashes and yeah they look really good, but they won't get the usage or the minutes to make them feel comfortable about yes, I'm a first round pick.
Yeah, I agree with your claim of about the opportunity. A big part of college basketball and becoming an NBA draft pick is having opportunity in front of you and seizing
Yeah.
it and kind of achieving above whatever expectations people have for you, especially in the stop sleeping on column and specifically with Ty Rogers. You're talking about an all-round player who's kind of A tertiary playmaker. He's comfortable with the ball in his hands. But the things that really, jump off the page when I watch him are the things that are not in the box score.
Yeah,
I think
I
his
completely
hustle, his
agree.
motor, the way that he fights for loose balls, I think is exceptional. He's great at filling spots on the floor. He knows where he needs to be. Really, really high IQ player, willing to dish it out. Um, can get to his spots on the floor, and he's got a capable jump shot. I love everything that he brings to the table. I think he's a consummate role player. I think he's a consummate professional. The role that he filled on that USA U18 team really allowed guys like Cam Whitmore, guys like Kalel, or guys like Derek Lively, and players like that to really show out and show kind of some of those highlight reel plays, get out in transition where he was more of the scrappy guy filling in the gaps for a lot of those players. Um, at Illinois, I could see him playing the four and starting, and they have Matt Meyer who can be a guy who can stretch the floor. I think that honestly, Ty Rodgers makes the Illinois team even better. I just don't think he's one of those guys where we'll do Adou Thiero next, but I don't think he's a guy where Adou Thiero where he needs the ball in his hands to be effective and perform at a high level this year. I think he can do that without the ball in his hands. And if people are really watching him and watching the tape, this guy is awesome. And I think he could very easily turn into a 2 or 3 year college guy because people aren't watching for some of these things. But I think when you're drafted in the NBA, sometimes you have to look beyond the upside swings. And I think this is one guy, if you're looking to add a player that can come in and do everything that you want to, you hear guys like Spencer Dinwiddie talking about Dwight Powell, and you hear about the things that he says that he does. This guy that comes in every day is working, lifting, working on his body, working on his game. And then when he gets on the court and may not have the opportunities, he comes in and does everything else that you would need to. He doesn't get the flashy scoring numbers, doesn't get to dunk every time. Like these are things that only a basketball player would recognize. And I think Ty Rodgers is your favorite player's favorite teammate. And I think he's going to continue to show that. And I'm excited for his future.
Here's a interesting comparison if we're comparing draft classes. Would you say Ty Rodgers is the Kennedy Chandler of this draft?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think that if you are looking for someone to come in and be a leader on the court, doesn't need to be the focal point, doesn't need to get all the credit. I mean, this is your guy.
Yeah.
He's young. I mean, this is a freshman, and you're gonna have the opportunity to take him. I think just a lot of teams are gonna make the mistake of passing on him in this draft. I see him as one of those guys that might not get drafted, and I think it won't be because of anything that he does. I think it'll just be because of the scouting community and the way people scout these days.
Yeah,
He's just
I
one of
agree
those
with you.
guys that's a little bit past his time in terms of some of the things that he does really well. But I think with where the NBA is moving in terms of spacing, in terms of switchability on defense, like there's a guy who can guard small fives, he can guard fours, he can guard threes, and he can get out on the perimeter and guard twos. I mean, he is a do-it-all type of guy. And those are some of my favorite players. I mean, you talk about, Kyle Anderson and guys like that, don't maybe show you everything that you want in terms of like highlight reel plays, but does everything that a basketball team needs to win.
Yeah, he is definitely one that I think is going to slip under a lot of people's radar for this year.
I'm glad
And
we started
either,
with him.
yeah, I think I am too. You want to talk Adou Thiero? Because I think that it's funny for those of you who listened to our Kentucky podcast. Um, we forgot about Adou Thiero,
Yeah, I mean, there's so many good players on their team.
but so the way that we found out about him, Caleb picked him up, sent me his tape, and I went back, I watched the Bahamas tour, and I was like, there's flashes of talent with this kid. He's long, he's quick,
Can I say that
he
in our Stop Sleeping on Callum, he has the most potential?
yes. And I think that he is the I think that he I believe that Adou Thiero, if he doesn't get the minutes at Kentucky, I think he's a guy who could be a potential lottery pick next year.
Absolutely. I think he has top 10 athleticism and top 10 positional size and top 10 intangibles. I think it's just about, putting the ball in his hands and getting some of those development things. He's still a young guy. I'm excited to watch him play. He's got a smooth jumper. I think he does everything that you want a combo guard to do. Super athletic and super impressive at 6'6". There's a guy that I think we all need to watch out for this year. I don't really have much else to say to him. I just think that that's just kind of his player evaluation.
Yeah, and I think that the tough thing for him is he's probably going to be playing behind two other guys on this list, in Cason Wallace and Chris Livingston. I
Yeah.
mean,
Do we want to pivot over there?
yeah, I
We can
mean,
do kind of both of them at the same time.
I think we should do Cason first because,
But
in my opinion, I think I personally have Cason a bit low. I think because two things to keep in mind. One, Kentucky guard Cal, for whatever reasons, knows how to prepare his guards for the NBA. Don't know what he's doing over there. I don't know how he does it, but for whatever reason, year in, year out, whatever guard seems to blossom at Kentucky is NBA ready and comes onto the court right away. In the league right now, you have Tyler Harrow, Emmanuel Quickley, Tyrese Maxey, all big name Kentucky guards.
De'Aaron
John
Fox.
Wall, Eric Bledsoe are
De'Aaron
guys in the past. De'Aaron Fox, Devin Booker, like Jamal Murray. We could keep going on and on the more that we pontificate
Shea
on
Gilgeous-Alexander.
exactly. I mean, it's a never-ending list of guys who have a ton of talent and show out in Kentucky and show out in the NBA. And Cason Wallace is a bulldog
He's a
on
dog.
defense.
Certified
He
dog.
he is one of those
Wait,
guys
wait,
that
wait. Did you not hear about the reports that came back?
what
Well, they did some X-rays of Cason Wallace, and they
I
found
knew
out
this was
that he's
coming.
got that dog in him.
I knew this was coming. But
I
really though,
had you
like
for a second.
no, you didn't. I knew it was coming. But I really think like Cason Wallace is a guy who could leapfrog a few of these other guards if they don't show out this year in
Absolutely.
the lower portion of the
Keontae
top
George.
15.
Oh, damn. Did I say something?
Did you Keontae cough?
No, I didn't. I don't
I
know.
think you did. Um, and I think that his backcourt mate Chris Livingston is a bit of a different player. Livingston is more of a pure shooter. Not quite as much of a defensive threat, but he's not an embarrassment defensively. He's got athleticism, he's got length, and with Livingston, I want to see put the ball on the floor.
Yeah, I think he's
Um,
capable. I think
I
that he has
think
a
he is.
capable handle.
I,
I like his streaky shooting. I mean, not from the point that it's streaking and consistent, but I like that when he's on, he doesn't miss. This is a guy who can projects as a 3-level scorer. I think it's just about putting it all together for him. He has all the talent in the world, all the athleticism, and that's just kind of my thing with Chris Livingston. I think it's just a matter of putting it all together for him. Um, yeah.
let's keep the Kentucky train rolling.
Oscar Tshiebwe.
Oscar Tshiebwe, Damian Collins. Let's go to Collins next because Damian Collins has grown on me a ton.
I'm glad.
Um, I think Damian Collins is a first round pick. Um,
This is a guy
his
that I had in the top 15 last year, like of my guys to watch for looking ahead. I was like, Damian Collins is in my top 15 of guys.
the thing that I noticed this year, especially in the Bahamas tour, his jump shot looks smooth, and he is so long. He's he just uses his length really well too. We've talked about this a lot. There are guys who are long and don't do a good job of utilizing their length. And then there are guys who are long and you can just tell by the way that they play that they're long and they use it to their advantage. And Damian Collins is one of those guys. He is a menace on the offensive boards. It's going to be tough to grab a rebound this year against Damian Collins and Oscar Tshiebwe down low. That's for sure. So even that's another reason why we're so high in Kentucky is that even if they're not shooting well, they have two guys in one who is the returning leading rebounder in all of college basketball in Oscar Tshiebwe, and a guy in Damian Collins who can just out jump you for boards. Um, and I think if Damian Collins can shoot 30-ish% from three this year, there's no reason for me to believe that he can't be a wing in the NBA. No reason to. Even a stretch big at times. I think that he is so long and mobile that you could deploy him as a small ball pick and roll big. And
I agree.
the
I think
versatility matters there.
you're hitting everything on the nose. I think, for me, it's as simple as when you pair that type of athleticism with that type of ability to use it. And then you also give him like a skill set that has potential, that's very untapped. I mean, it's hard not to fall in love with this guy. I want to continue to see that jumper fall like you were talking about. I think when you look at Kentucky's front court, he pairs very well with Tshiebwe and Toppin. Whoever he's on the floor with, I think he's going to thrive at the 4 or 5. Um, I mean, I don't really have anything else to say. I love Damion Collins. I want him to be better than a lot of the guys in this class. Like, that's just what I want from him. I think he could be a top 20 guy in terms of pure talent and athleticism. I could see some team taking a chance on him in the top 15. Like, this is a guy who could be a dramatic riser throughout the year and is going to be a player to watch from my perspective. And I think when you pair him with a guy like Oscar Tshiebwe, pivoting a little bit, when you pair him with a guy who is so stable and so consistent at what he does, it allows players to flourish around him. I mean, we don't have Jacob Toppin on here, but he should be. I mean, he is a supremely talented and a supremely rare athlete, both him and Collins, in terms of their ability to rise over players around the rim and impact the game on the glass, like you were talking about. Tshiebwe does a lot of those same things, but he does it because he's just a pure dog. I mean, this when you want to talk about physicality in college basketball, this is the most physically intimidating player in all of NCAA. This is a guy, maybe besides like Sharp from Western Kentucky, who's like actually 7'7", but in terms of guys that are at major programs, have a complete skill package, and also do all of the dirty work, Oscar Tshiebwe is like exactly what you want in this era of basketball in terms of a center. A guy who runs faster than everybody down to get back on defense and to get down to offense. I mean, he's fast for his size. Like, this guy's got wheels, and he uses his strength to clear out space. He's active on the glass, always willing to make 2 or 3 jumps to contest a shot. His defensive rotations are good. He knows where to be on offense. He knows not how to clog up spacing. Even though, we'd like to see more from the jump shot, I think if he can knock down a 15-footer, he's going to be a first-round pick. This is the player of the year, and I think he's going to do it again. I think that there's maybe a couple guys that I could see, like Caleb Love, really, for some reason, just irks me as a guy who could, also could be on this in the mix list. Caleb Love's a guy who could have a crazy scoring year and maybe give Oscar Tshiebwe. There's Drew Timme, who's going to even have more of a focal point in the offense at Gonzaga. There's going to be a lot of guys that have opportunities to show out, but I think Oscar Tshiebwe has established himself as the best player in college basketball.
I love that you highlighted the dirty work with Tshiebwe because what I love, he doesn't always get the rebound on the first try. Sometimes he's got to battle for it. And it's the second effort, the third effort, the fourth effort, where he is just, I am in full go mode until I get that board. And with the jump shot, the one thing that I do love about Tshiebwe and why I'm optimistic about him for this season is you can tell he's been working on it and it's been improving year on year. And I think if you can extend it, to that range that you're talking about, 15 feet, Oscar Tshiebwe is a viable pick and pop option.
Yep.
And I think that, again, I've had this conversation with someone before. I'm not saying he's Bam Adebayo. Please do not quote me on this as saying he's Bam Adebayo. I think that the role that Bam Adebayo plays for the Miami Heat is the type of role that Oscar Tshiebwe can play in the NBA. A guy who's initiating dribble handoffs, a guy who is fighting and switching all the time, who can guard multiple positions.
Well,
A guy
when
who
you
is
look at
going to
what
be
does Onyeka Okongwu bring to the table right now? It's everything that Oscar Tshiebwe does.
he's
You know what
just
I
a
mean?
couple, yeah.
Like, that's a very viable comparison in my eyes. I think that a guy like Onyeka Okongwu is going to have a long career, and I think Oscar Tshiebwe may even be older than Onyeka Okongwu right now. But I think that he still presents a lot of these skills that you can't deny when you're trying to build a winning basketball team. The whole age thing gets overblown in college basketball and in basketball in general. We still see that guys come from the G League and have high quality careers, and there's veteran players all the time. Shout out Matt Ryan. There's veteran players all the time that can come in and make big plays for you at any time. So I want to pivot from one of the older players on our lists to one of the younger players, Brandon Miller. And I think it would only be fair that we talk about Brandon Miller in this episode. He has to be mentioned. This is a guy who's getting a lot of buzz lately. A lot of the words coming, a lot of the things coming out of Alabama is saying that they love this kid. They think that he's going to be a major driving force and why they're a really good team this year. And when I watch Brandon Miller play, I am not surprised that people are saying these things. This is a guy that I see as a top 10 prospect right now, in my eyes. I think that he has all the physical tools as well as the IQ to be an elite player in the NBA at some point. I think it's just about tying all these aspects of his game together. The jumper's there. He has a smooth stroke from the outside, and he's able to create a shot in mid range, gets to whatever spot he wants to on the floor. He is he has a great handle for his size and age. I think he's got some underrated passing ability too. This is a do-it-all wing who has the athleticism to impact the game on the defensive end and is a willing defender on that end. Superstar in the making. I mean, I'm just gonna say it right now.
I think the big thing to talk about with Brandon Miller in terms of putting context into consideration with Bama is not a wing heavy school. They are very guard heavy. So Brandon Miller, since he is such an elite talent coming in, is going to be able to come in and get the minutes and probably get plenty of usage as well. If he is a guy who can score off the bounce for Bama, he is going to have the ball in his hands when it matters late in the game, and that is something that you want out of your top 10 prospects. So I think that a big thing with a lot of these guys is opportunity. And again, that's why we have some of them as guys that we think are later first round picks. But Brandon Miller has both A, the talent, and B, the opportunity to be an elite prospect this year. And I am completely with you. He looks great coming into the season. Everyone's buzzing about how much muscle he's put on. He's ready to go. He's a guy he's the reason that I'm going to be excited to watch Bama this year. And
You're
he's
getting
going to be
me hype.
playing against top level competition too in the SEC this year.
Me hype. You're getting me hype. It's almost here next week, ladies and
I
gentlemen.
know. Monday morning, we will have college basketball officially.
And some of these guys will be in action. And speaking of somebody that'll be in action on Monday, Kyle Filipowski. I don't want to spend too much time on him because I think he's a very basic player to kind of break down. You
Yeah.
got stretch four. And the thing with Filipowski that I really like is his IQ. I think this is a guy who may not have the athletic prowess of a lot of the guys. Like he's the least athletic player that we have probably in the whole honorable mention section. Um, but I think he has the most like raw skill. This is a guy who can knock down open shots, post up smaller defenders, and is super effective at making plays for teammates when he gets himself in a position where he may not have the best shot. I think this is a guy
Yeah.
that Duke is going to rely on to be, not an initiator, but I think when Cason Wallace is out of the game, um, I can very well see a pick and roll action with Filipowski and Lively taking place.
Yeah.
And I think that
I agree.
that is going to be my wet dream. Is Kyle Filipowski running pick and rolls with Lively, and both of their versatility to space the floor make them both very, very good pick and pop options. Duke's offense is going to be lethal. I just hope people can realize that. They have Chris Livingston who can initiate in the pick and roll, Cason Wallace who can initiate in the, or I'm talking about,
You're mixing up Duke and Kentucky,
yeah,
buddy.
they're both so good. They're both so fun. Derek Whitehead who can create in the pick and roll.
There
Uh,
we go, Jeremy Roach.
Jeremy Roach and other guys on their roster that can create in the pick and roll. And I can't wait to see Filipowski do the same thing. Um, yeah, that's kind of all I got. I mean, the jump shot's so good. I think that if that translates, he'll be a late first rounder. And if some of the other stuff that I'm talking about translates the playmaking, I think if he can play perimeter defense, which I think he gets the white guy label too much, like white guys can't play defense. I think he can play defense, and I think he can play defense at the point of attack. I don't know if he's the shot blocking type of guy that you look for at the 4 and 5,
Yeah. I
the
think
small ball
so.
option, but I think he still provides a lot of those things offensively. And you look at
I
players in the league, there's guys that can't defend straight up at some of these positions. And it's very easy to hide guys who can't play defense when they can shoot 40 to 42% from three.
Yeah, the one thing that concerns me is the mobility on defense.
I just think that's an
But
overrated. I think that's an overrated concern. I just think it. I've seen him
it's
many
no,
times.
that's valid. But I mean, I'm just saying in general. Like, I mean, he doesn't inspire me defensively, but I think that
You
he
probably
does.
don't
Of
inspire him
Hey, let me
defensively.
finish, man. Let me praise him first before you come bashing it. Jesus,
He doesn't like your
humble,
defense either.
huh?
He doesn't like your defense either.
Well, I'm 5'11", so he could probably post me up. Um, look, I don't. The defense I'm not totally sold on yet, but he does so many different things offensively that I can buy into him a bit more. I just need to see him be able to do it defensively, and I think that playing next to Lively is going to really help him
Yeah,
because it won't force him to be a shot blocker at the rim.
because
It'll allow him to kind of be a weak side help defender.
yeah, and I think when Lively defends well at the rim, it's going to create opportunities for Filipowski to leak out, and I like him in transition. I
Yeah,
like the
he
ball in his hands in transition.
Yeah, he is. He has the vision. He's kind of got that Laravia factor to him, where he's got great vision with the ball in his hands and runs the floor well and can shoot the three.
Yep. Um, Speaking of guys who can run the floor well and shoot the three, do you know where I'm going next? Baylor Scheierman. I mean, this is a guy who is an offensive playmaker. I mean, when you talk about guys who can shoot, this
Yeah,
guy was the best shooter in the entire country last year for North Dakota State, and now he comes to a Creighton team where all they're going to ask him to do is shoot the ball. They're
yeah.
gonna
For South Dakota State, I think he led them in
or North. I said South
legitimately.
Dakota.
It was legitimately every. Not he led them in points, rebounds, assists, and I'm pretty sure he led them in either steals or blocks, maybe both. Like when you watch that team play, you'd see Baylor Scheierman come down, drill a three, come down the other end, make a stop, come down, make an assist.
Rebound, assist, rebound, score.
It was the Scheierman show.
Yeah.
It was. And I want to see how his mobility and defense translate to the Big East, but I think that it can. Um, I also think that he's just such a lethal threat shooting off the dribble or off the catch and shoot that it may not matter that much. Because again, JJ Redick was not a great defender. There's other guys like Landry Shamet is not a great defender, and
I look
they've
at him and I think, like, in terms of making lefty comparisons, Luke Kennard. Like Luke Kennard's offensive role at Duke was very similar to Sharman's offensive role at South Dakota State. And I think that he's going to have a more NBA style role at Creighton. And I think that's honestly going to bode a lot well for his draft stock because teams are going to see him in actions that they're going to want to run for him. You know,
yep.
running floppy actions across the baseline, getting him to curl up and hit these knockdown wing jumpers, you know, closing the door for him to get open shots on the perimeter. I mean, this is a guy who can run, be a focal point of your out of bounds attacks. He can be a guy who can create offense from anywhere. And I think that's a huge thing for Creighton to have, especially when they have so many great players on their team. Like we have Trey Alexander on here. He's not a guy that I think we should stop on and elaborate. I think he's pretty raw, but you know, there's guys like Kaluma that we talked about in our previous episode that are going to make things very easy for Scheierman to look really good. And I think a guy that is done a little bit of the opposite thing as Kaluma, or not Kaluma, but Scheierman in terms of his role, where he's moving from a more off-ball role to now being an on-ball scorer, is Emoni Bates for Eastern Michigan. I
Yeah,
think
Emoni
when
Bates
we
has looked
talk about a
really good in
guy
preseason.
who has felt the force of media scrutiny and you know, the kind of day-to-day world that is basketball Twitter. I mean, this guy's taken the brunt of it. This is a guy who got straight up called a bust before he's even gotten out of college basketball. He didn't even really play a lot last year. He came in as a young player. You know, he had no intentions of going right to the league, reclassified himself, and now is an opportunity with Noah Farrakhan over there at Eastern Michigan to light up the scoreboard. And I think if this guy, if Emoni Bates continues to show the tough shot making and continues to show the takeover ability, it's going to be undeniable for somebody to not want to take a chance on him in the first round. And I think that even if he's just a knockdown shooter, he's going to be a second round pick. He has the size. I don't think the athleticism is there as much as people were hoping when he came out of high school, but I still think he's a good athlete. Obviously the negative wingspan is kind of a question mark. You don't see a lot of guys with negative wingspans turning into exceptional NBA players, especially at the wing position. But Emoni Bates has a tight handle. He can create for himself on offense. And I think if he displays the ability to create for others as well, this is an offensive weapon that teams are going to be able to utilize day one because he's a bucket getter.
He's a guy who I'm really rooting for, honestly.
So am I.
Because here's the thing with Emoni Bates, right? This kid was 6'8" in seventh grade, eighth grade. And all of a sudden, his high school development gets a bit derailed. I don't think it was the best decision for him to reclassify. I think that he probably should have stayed at a high school for 2 years, gone to college at 18, and I think he would be in a better spot in that sense. But I do think he made a fantastic decision to say, you know what, Memphis, it didn't work out. I had injuries. I didn't play well. Maybe I should go somewhere that's a little bit lower stakes, get out of the spotlight, and really just play and put my head down and show people that, like, I can still hoop. Like, I still have talent. I'm still here. And I think that it's early. Again, it's very early. But I think in a couple of games that he's played at Eastern Michigan so far, you've started to see, like, wow, Emoni Bates he's still got it. Like, he's not a
Never
bust.
lost it.
He never lost it. And I really hope that he has a really good season this year, because I think that what he needs to do is just show up, dominate for Eastern Michigan. And, I think one of two situations happens for him in that sense. Either he's getting his name called on draft night, or he can transfer back to a bigger school, which I think those are both feasible options for him, because there may be a chance that teams want to see him do it at a more competitive level in college than in Eastern Michigan.
All right. We got a couple more here that I kind of want to get through quickly. Jordan Walsh and Trevon Brazile for Arkansas, we can kind of talk about together. They do a lot of the same things. Supremely athletic, both of them. Both have good positional size. Both are great defenders. Trevon Brazile, obviously, if I'm not mistaken, was in the top consideration for SEC Defensive Player of the Year last year at Missouri. Led the conference in blocking shots, if I'm not mistaken. Jordan Walsh is a guy in high school who put up highlight reel dunks. Trevon Brazile in his own right is a highlight reel dunker. Jordan Walsh, when you talk about the things that I love that he does, he's got a great handle, can create for himself, can create for others by getting to the rim. He's got a quick first step, can finish over and through contact. The most underrated thing with him is his rebounding for his position. I think he's an exceptional offensive rebounder. Really just, again, he's like these Ty Rodgers guys, but I think he's got the real athleticism to be an impact player as a freshman. I think he's lethal in transition. This Arkansas team is going to get out and run, and I think they have the perfect talent for it. This Arkansas team is going to be so good, dude.
They're
so
gonna
good.
Be
They're
really
going to be
fun.
so good. I'm so excited to watch Arkansas basketball.
And the thing that excites me about Jordan Walsh is that he's not going to have to garner a ton of attention defensively from teams. They're going to be focusing on Nick Smith and Anthony Black. And so he's going to have an opportunity. He doesn't have to be the first or second guy, but he's going to get his looks, and he's going to show flashes, and he's going to have stretches of a game. He's going to have 1 or 2 games where, like, he's got it going and he takes over this year. I could very easily see that happening.
Got a capable jump shot.
He does. And I think that that's something that Brazile doesn't quite have yet. But I think that Brazile is kind of in a similar boat to Damion Collins, although I think he's a little bit of a lesser version of Damion Collins in my book, just because his offensive game is not quite as developed as Damion Collins is, but the length and athleticism, and I think that he uses his body just as well defensively.
Yeah, I'd agree with some of that. I do think that he's an underrated on-ball player with the ball in his hands, putting the ball on the deck and getting to the basket. I want to keep it moving. I kind of want to turn to some more of our deep cuts. how could we talk about deep cuts without talking about probably my favorite mid-major prospect in the entire country, Jalen Slawson for Furman. This is a guy that people are going to be like, Caleb, what are you talking about? I've watched this guy play. There's no way that 60 players in this class aren't better than this guy. At playing basketball, this is one of the best basketball players I've seen while I've been watching film. He has such a high IQ. Like, he plays the game the right way, shares the ball. And I think when you talk about the modern NBA, it's guys like this that make a team run. Like Grant Williams, the slower moving, he's not athletic freak, but I think he's a better athlete than Grant Williams. Don't get me wrong. I mean, this guy came into college as a rim runner and a guy who gets rebounds, plays defense, was a SoCon defensive player of the year last year. Great defender, great on ball, can switch 2 through 4, can sometimes guard the 5, strong with his body, but on offense, on the perimeter, as a screener, as a guy who can initiate with a handoff. You're talking about it with Tshiebwe. I think that role perfectly fits Jalen Slawson. I wouldn't be surprised if he puts up 18 points per game because he can fill it up. He's got a great post package. He has a good turnaround jumper for a college player. A turnaround jumper? Are you kidding me? This guy can knock down the 3. I mean, there's not a lot of things that this guy can't do. He can dish the ball to teammates, has great vision, great feel for the game. This is just simply one of my favorite college basketball players in the country. And I mean, maybe I'm biased. I think I probably am a little bit. I think he's a definite draft pick, and I think he's a guy who can be an early second round pick, late first round pick for a winning team.
I think there's a couple of underrated things that people don't talk about that Jalen Slawson does really well. I think that Jalen Slawson does on specifically offensively. I think he does a fantastic job of making the right read on screening plays. There's a lot of times where he gets the handoff. It's not there. Waits. Very patient, very methodical. The other thing that I think he does a lot better than most college players is he uses his shot fake so well to draw defenders in. He is capable of taking the 3. He is capable of
Off the bounds.
stepping in and taking a jumper.
Off the
He
bounds.
is. He is. And he does a really good job of leveraging guys being out of position to either drive by, or I've seen him a couple of times. He'll start to drive by, the guy gets a step, and he snaps it back for a jumper. It's little things like that with Jalen Slawson that he does really, really well that just point to the high IQ that Caleb was talking about. And he's just a guy that plays the game so well and has such a great feel for the game that it's hard for me to not see him get drafted. Absolutely. It's really hard for me to not see him be an NBA player.
Absolutely. I think that's a good spot to wrap it up. I mean, I appreciate you guys' time. We'll definitely be getting into more of these players as the season goes on. As always, you can check us out at ontheclockbb.com. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, like all of our videos, like both of us on Twitter, follow us, do whatever you want to do. This has been a good one, and we're off the clock.